A blind, trained killer visits brutal, bloody revenge on criminals who kidnap his daughter. Will he be able to succeed?
Don't Breathe 2 is the 2021 sequel to the horror exploitation film Don't Breathe. This movie revisits the villain, Norman Nordstrom, 8 years later. Today we'll review and recap the events of this movie. Let's check it out.
The camera sweeps over neglected city streets in Detroit and through the smoke of a burning building, coming down to find a little girl passed out. 8 years later, the girl Phoenix runs through the woods to hide from someone. All is silent before a giant, snarling Rottweiler leaps from the bushes and chases after her. She's able to escape narrowly and climbs over a chicken wire fence too tall for the dog. She finds an open car with a handgun in the front seat. As she takes it out, a man appears behind her. He takes her by the head and neck and quickly disarms her before she spins away. She calls him father. Norman, the blind villain in the first film, now seemingly turned into a caring father. They meet up with the giant Rottweiler and go back to the house where Phoenix is cutting his hair. She's sad they have no photos left of her mom. Norman says they were all lost in the fire. Phoenix wants to go into town, but Norman says she isn't allowed because she failed her survival test. Norman's friend Hernandez is dropping off flowers at home. She asks if he's taking Phoenix into town, but he still says no. Hernandez says he should go easier on her or he'll drive her away. He takes this advice to heart and allows her to go. In the car, Phoenix sings a lullaby to herself that she thinks her mom used to sing to her when she was little. Hernandez offers her to take her to their old home so she can visit her mom, to which she promises she won't tell Norman. Phoenix hears thumping from upstairs inside the burnt wreck of their home, which frightens her, so she rushes out.
As Phoenix sits alone in the park, we see news reports in a gas station about an organ trafficking doctor who's on the run from the police. Hey, as intelligent movie fans, we know this is a little thing called foreshadowing. It's going to be important down the line. And a smart movie fan like yourself would know that a news report like this surely is going to be significant further down the line in this story.
In the gas station's restroom, a strange man introduces himself to Phoenix. He says his name is Raylan, and it's clear he's not to be trusted. Phoenix stands her ground, and Shadow, her Rottweiler protector, issues a threatening growl. As she walks past him, he brushes her hair and notices a streak of gray in it.
As they drive away, Raylan hops into a pickup truck that's got a cooler in the back. Maybe for organs? Raylan tells the driver to follow them.
Hernandez gives Norman another speech about trying to be easier with Phoenix and not letting the sins of his past shape her future. She says he must have done some bad things as a SEAL, but she has no idea what he is truly capable of. Driving home, Hernandez gets stuck behind a pickup truck and gets out to ask them to move. A pit bull snarls from a cage in the back, and the man in the car is Raylan from earlier. He notices she used to be a soldier too. Raylan says he served in Iraq before being dishonorably discharged. He agrees to move the car, and his three companions look on menacingly as she returns to her vehicle. She begins to call 911 when a man springs from the back seat and begins to strangle her with a strap. She tries to free herself, but the man hits her head with a hammer, killing her brutally as she crashes the car. At the house, Phoenix is demanding that she goes to school next year, but Norman is against this too. She says she's lonely and that his being there isn't enough for her. Later that night, Shadow senses something across the road and follows his nose to investigate. A gunshot against a tree startles him, and we cut back to the house where Phoenix is sitting in her room as Norman comes out of the house and rattles Shadow's food bowl. There's no response, and Norman finds Shadow's other bowl is still full. He shouts to him, but the dog doesn't come. Norman puts his coat on and whistles for Shadow once more before he goes out to look for her, not sensing that two of Raylan's goonies, Jim and Duke, have snuck into his house, hiding quietly in the kitchen as he leaves.
The men sneak their way around the house as Phoenix hides from them. Her father has been preparing her for a situation like this her entire life. And though she seems frightened, she's fully capable of handling this situation.
The slow dread of the situation plays without words or music as Phoenix narrowly avoids both men. She's about to leave when a third man bangs at the front door. She continues to hide in a closet as the men search the property. Outside, Norman finds Shadow's body. At first he weeps, but then he feels slick blood on his fur. The realization creeps up his spine as he pulls a bullet from the wound. Phoenix makes for the back door, but a gunshot stops her in her tracks, and a thin, wiry goon ushers her back into the house with it. Norman comes to the rescue and bursts through the barred window enough to grab the man, shouting for Phoenix to get in the box. Phoenix rushes for the basement, pursued by the second muscular goon, Duke, and manages to lock herself in the heavy-duty metal box just in time, breathing heavily as the man looks at her through the grate in the top.
Norman dresses a grisly wound on his arm with super glue in the garage. A third goon, Jared, he notices blood on the outside handle, and he comes in to inspect. He creeps around the space, but he's not slick enough. Norman gets the drop on him.
Jim hears the screams and runs to the garage to find Jared has had his mouth superglued shut. Jim can do nothing as Jared suffocates, so he gets a screwdriver and pierces his cheek, allowing him to breathe again. Jim notices a Navy SEAL badge on the wall and understands who they're messing with, while Jared uses a shard of broken glass to slice open his glued mouth. Duke has started to fill Phoenix's box with water, giving her no choice but to come out as the water level rises. As the other muscle comes to help, Norman shuts and locks the door, trapping Duke in the basement with him. Duke takes a live electrical wire and dangles it over the water in the box, saying if Norman doesn't come out, he'll fry her. Norman throws out a gas canister into the room so Duke can't use his gun and stalks out of the shadows as the two of them make ready to fight hand to hand. Norman swings an improvised metal club coated in concrete wildly. The two engage in a brutal tooth and claw fight to do as much damage to each other as possible. They accidentally knock the tap back on and the water level rises in Phoenix's box. Duke is winning the fight and he collects a knife while Norman crawls over the floor and pulls the live wire out of the box. He uses it to spark the gas and an explosion launches Duke against the wall. Norman uses all his strength to knock the box over and saves Phoenix as she chokes back to life, coughing up water. Accompanied by Raylan, the goons search the basement for Norman and Phoenix, following a long trail that tracks under the house to a hatch. The two of them hide in a greenhouse while the team of villains catches up with them.
Raylan calls out to Phoenix, warning her that she should be more afraid of Norman than she is of him. This hints that he might not be who she thinks he is. Norman rushes from the darkness, but Raylan disarms him and knocks him to the ground.
Raylan calms Phoenix and takes his beanie off, revealing he has the same gray streak of hair she has. He tells her that a fire in their house that he was blamed for 8 years ago led to his imprisonment. Norman took the little girl. Now Raylan is out of prison and wants her back. Raylan orders Jim to take him outside and kill him. He obeys, but Norman is able to escape under a hail of bullets. As Jared drags Phoenix out, she sticks a pitchfork through his foot and gets away. He stalks after she and Norman appear from the shadows, stabbing him in the throat before splitting his head in two with a giant gardening tool. Phoenix demands to know who she is, but Raylan releases his pit bull into the house, which separates the two of them, forcing Norman into the basement as he avoids the snarling beast while Phoenix tries to escape the window. Phoenix gets away but is captured by Raoul. Raylan sets fire to the home with Norman still inside while Phoenix is loaded into the truck and they drive off. Norman saves the trapped dog from the flames and blindly tries to navigate the burning home, falling onto the roof of his greenhouse before it shatters through and he falls to safety. Phoenix wakes up in an abandoned hotel. Raylan says she can leave whenever she wants, but if she stays, she can learn who she really is. She asks him questions about her past, things she never knew about herself. She learns Tara is her real name and her mother is called Josephine. Phoenix says there's a child shelter she wants to go to. She passes a man in the corridor who looks strangely familiar, and as she approaches the exit, she hears a woman's voice singing the old lullaby from her childhood.
Phoenix turns to see the shadow of a woman in a wheelchair, slowly rolling towards her, her voice cracking as she sings. The two cry as they embrace each other, and Raylan stands over them.
Phoenix learns that ever since the fire, Josephine has been suffering from a chronic lung condition. They used to make drugs in the basement, and the fumes mixed with the fire poisoned her, and now she's slowly dying. Josephine reveals that she needs a new heart, and they plan on using Phoenix's whether she wants to give it up or not. She realizes her drink has been spiked as she passes out. Outside his home's burnt ruin, Norman finds the pit bull waiting peacefully over him. He finds Hernandez's body in the cab of her truck and briefly weeps for her before rallying and deciding what must be done. He takes a machete from the trunk. The pit bull still tracks him, so he puts a lead on it and tells it to go home. Phoenix wakes up handcuffed to a hospital bed next to her mother. The smoking man is back. It's the wanted doctor from the news. He says he needs to cut the heart out of her while she's still breathing to preserve it. He's about to begin cutting open Phoenix with an electric saw. The power in the building goes out, and Jim is ordered to investigate. He turns the power on in the basement, illuminating Norman in the shadows. They fight briefly, and Jim gets the better of him. Norman chokes Jim by putting the dog bell down his throat. He follows the sound of his stumbling steps and throws a hammer precisely at Jim's head before coming in close to finish the job. Word travels that Norman has found them, and the group of goons find him in the basement, where he lies still in a pool of water. As the ripples in the water alert him, he springs to life and shoots them all, missing Raoul, who tells him about Raylan's plan and that he's not cool with killing kids. Raylan and Josephine escape with Phoenix as Norman lets off a series of gas canisters, plunging the abandoned pool room into a thick mist. The two fight the fog, and Raylan fires blindly into it. As the mist clears, he sees that he has shot Josephine and roars in anguish. Raylan and Norman fight as Josephine slumps in her wheelchair, dragging Phoenix towards the abandoned pool. She grabs a machete and hacks off Josephine's arm, but she's not strong enough and falls into the pool, landing on top of her wicked mother. Norman defeats Raylan and plunges his thumb into his eyes, taking his sight away and leaving him blind like him. Norman comes clean to Phoenix, revealing the sins of his past and that she should stay away from him. He shouts at her until she leaves and sits weeping. Suddenly, Raylan stabs him in the back with a knife and is about to slit his throat when Phoenix saves him, running him through with Norman's machete. Phoenix cradles Norman as the life gently leaves his body, and he dies with a contented smile on his face. Phoenix arrives at the children's shelter and asks if she can stay.
Making a sequel to such a self-contained, concept-driven story like Don't Breathe sounded impossible. But the sequel finds exciting new ground to take the franchise to, while keeping the spirit of the original alive. Stephen Lang is fantastic as Norman, bringing an intimidating physicality to his threatening killer. And seeing him play the caring father as opposed to the ruthless murderer in the original is a great way to flesh him out and give him a redemption story. This is gritty, exciting, and gory, fast-paced fun that's a more than worthy sequel to the original. Please subscribe to our channel to be notified when we upload, and don't forget to suggest movies in the comments down below that you want us to recap in the future.